Best Christmas Ever by Mary Balogh. Ah, Christmas traditions. For most of us, we can't wait for them, whatever they are. Except for Edward and Gwent, Baron Radbrook did not. His family Christmas gatherings at Williston Hall had always been comforting to him. Well, except for the last one, and of course the one 9 years before. Well, he couldn't really blame that one on Christmas. It had happened 1 month in the summer, but that one had very nearly wrecked his life for years. And this one wouldn't look to be any better. The family gathering was all about the children. All the children under 12 years old had been told since they were old enough to understand. The circle they sat in around the fire was special. It happened 2 days before Christmas, and the children were to make their last and final wish for the special gift, the one of their heart's desire. They were to tell the flames, and the flames would carry the special wish to St. Nick. But for Edwin, it was heartbreaking. His 5-year-old daughter hadn't spoken a word, uttered a laugh, and rarely even smiled for more than 2 years. Not since she stood on the bank of the river and watched her mother drown, attempting to save her ball. Anna had screamed non-stop for 2 days until she had completely lost her voice and had remained silent ever since. The Baron and his daughter were virtually inseparable after that, and he doted on her every wish. Except how was he to know what those special Christmas wishes were if she didn't speak? He could only guess. When it became Anna's turn to make her wish, the room held still, hoping beyond hope she would finally speak. Nothing. Only a small child squeezing her eyes tightly shut and raising her head to the heavens, wishing as hard as she could, then rising to crawl upon her father's lap. Anna loved her cousins, her aunts, and her uncles, but she preferred her father's hugs and kisses and rarely allowed anyone else's touch. Until this Christmas Eve. When Emma Milford arrived, she was filled with dread, near nauseating, and in a panic from terrible nostalgia, and a bitter regret that she hadn't stood against her aunt's wishes. She had refused her aunt's request the prior year, but it had been easier. She was still in black from the death of her mother. But this year she had no excuse, and her brother, Peter, and sister-in-law were eager for her to come. It had been 9 years last summer that she had been to Williston Hall. That had been for Peter and Sophie's wedding, and she had only been 18. The drawing room was full, and Emma only wished to melt into the wallpaper. Dressed in a matronly fashion, not wanting to be noticed, she made her way to the far corner and took her seat. She had passed unnoticed until the children had been invited to join the adults. The laughter and joy of the children lit the room. Emma smiled at the gaiety. When she glanced back to the threshold, there was a dark-haired, dark-eyed little girl standing just inside the door, solemn and alone, scanning the room. Emma supposed she must be searching for her parents, until she and the little girl's eyes met. Emma smiled, but the little girl's expression remained the same. However, to Emma's surprise, the child crossed the room, headed in her direction, never removing those brown eyes from hers. "Hello," Emma said when the little girl stopped in front of her. "What is your name?" The child said nothing, but looked at her steadily and solemnly. Then she reached and put her tiny hand on Emma's knee before withdrawing it. "I am Emma Milford," she said. "Would you like to shake my hand?" Emma extended her hand, and the little girl lowered her eyes to it, then laid her hand slowly in it. Emma closed her hand around the little girl's. "I am pleased to meet you. May I know who I am to have the pleasure of meeting?" The child looked up into her eyes again and said nothing. And then suddenly, Emma didn't know quite how it came about, but the little girl was in her lap. Then the little girl laid her dark curls to Emma's breast. Tears filled Emma's eyes. Who was this strange, silent little child with the dark, beautiful eyes and thin, familiar face? But of course, the answer came with a rush as someone stood in front of her. She raised her eyes and met the ones quite like his daughter's. He hadn't changed in 9 years. When at his urging his little girl refused to leave Emma, his jaw tightened. He turned away and with jerky movements walked away. He was angry. From the collection of short stories, A Regency Christmas 3, Mary Balogh once again gives us a tear-jerking, moving story. This one I read in only a couple of hours, crying and smiling with an occasional tingling sensation. Miss Balogh's writing skills wraps the story around us, and we feel all the emotions easily. This is another must-read at Christmas. The belief in the magic of the season fills this story. A little girl who hasn't uttered a sound in 2.5 years, and even if she could, has an impossible wish to fill. Anna believes in that magic that only comes once a year and discovers that wishes really do come true on Christmas. But can they last past that magical day? Little Anna hadn't thought of that heartbreak. As she closes her eyes, bound for sleep at the end of the happiest Christmas she could remember, she could only hope her Christmas wish would last past that magical day. I love Mary Balogh. I make no bones about that. She is one of my favorite historical romance authors. And this is another must-read. I rate this story an A+ with a heat level of a 1.